Welcome to Unscripted Gaming. What are we talking about today, Josh?
Well, we're talking about today of a recent news story that Nintendo's new console, the NX, might be based on Android and actually going open source with some Unix code.
So, today is June 3rd, the day that we're recording this. By the time this gets uploaded, it'll probably be like June 5th. Those rumors have been proven to be just patently not true. Just not true at all.
Which is a shame, really, because I really think that the Nintendo NX could benefit from not necessarily Android, but going a little more open source.
So, here's why Nintendo shouldn't go open source. They've never done it in the past. They've never had a reason to do it in the past. No, I'm being serious when I say this. They've never had a reason to go open source. Every system they've ever made has always been a proprietary type system, and it works. Yes, it's a bit of a headache when it comes. It's a tiny bit of a headache when it comes to development, but it can't be that much of a headache compared to it being completely open source and dealing with sometimes, many people would agree, janky code.
Well, here's my thing. It doesn't have to be completely open source, but it can be easier for people to port games over. Because, I mean, let's talk about Fallout 3. You'll notice that in the splash screen of the last thing, they say PC, Xbox, and Sony. There are probably people on the Nintendo platform who would buy Fallout 4, but they're not going to spend the resources to recode it and port it over to the Nintendo when... If it were built off Unix and something a little more open, it would be a lot easier for them to justify the people instead of having an entire team based around porting it to the Nintendo platform.
Now, that's a false argument, and let me tell you why. Both the Xbox One, PS4, and the PC, obviously, are all built with x86 coding architecture. None of them are built explicitly with Unix architecture in mind when it comes to making games. So basically, when you make a game for the PC now, it is just a flip of the control config file to get it working on the PS4 and Xbox One. Obviously, it's not that easy, but that's probably the hardest part to getting it to work. If the Nintendo Wii was built on the x86 architecture, then you would have an argument. But just making it strictly off of the Unix architecture just would not work.
Well, you know, I'm not saying that's all they need to do, but I think they do, like, in general, opening up the platform so that third-party developers have more reason to port their games to the console. Because I think the people with the Nintendos... way to make me sound really old there, me. People with the Nintendos these days. No, but people with Nintendo consoles who may only have the Nintendo console, like, are missing out on, I feel like, a big portion of games because third-party developers don't port their products over to the Nintendo. And I don't think it's because they won't sell. I think it's because it's so resource-intensive to do so now.
So... it's not only resource intensive, you have to force the stupid game to work with Nintendo's stupid controller.
But I mean, you don't have to. You could just say, "Hey, play Fallout with the Pro controller." Done. They don't have to like.
No, they have to have some functionality on that damn tablet.
Put your Pip-Boy on the pad instead of having to lift it up to do stuff. You can do shit on the fly. Do you know how awesome that would be?
That would work. That would be awesome. It's not.
But that's because Nintendo is a closed system, and Bethesda's not going to put the money into another team to port the game over because it's so time-consuming. If it were easy, if it were just like the PlayStation and the Xbox to say, hey, flip a switch and it works on Nintendo, all we have to do is put that Pip-Boy on a second screen, which, I mean, yeah, that's still a little extra work, but I think it's a pretty cool way to do it. It would open up... I can't even talk because it's so awesome to think about, but they can't.
There are two schools of thought when it comes to Nintendo and the Wii U and the way they've been doing games lately. Nintendo wants a different market. They this is a company that I respect because they are in. I respect and hate them at the same time. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for here. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling. I'm sorry. It is a company that both loves video games. You can tell in the games that they make that they truly, genuinely love video games. They're in it for the money, but they're going to give you a fun experience along the way. Microsoft is in it for the money. Sony, to an extent, is in it for the money, but they don't want to fuck you over while they're doing it. Let's be clear. They've been clear in that. They don't want to try to fuck over their consumers while they're making money. Because they've done it before, it didn't work, they're not going to do it again. Microsoft has no problem doing that. But Nintendo, because of their love of video games, they're always wanting to push that envelope, which I respect. But it fucks them over when it comes to, if you want to push the envelope, but none of your all of your competition wants to maintain the status quo, and if you're a developer, you're gonna go with the status quo. It's easier to develop for. It costs less money. I mean, if you can go ahead and build a game on x86 architecture and then put it out, you have a game that works for PC, PS4, Xbox One. You've automatically, by just building it on one code set, made it available for, what would you say, 80% of the entire video game market, if not more. I'm being very generous in that, by giving Nintendo 20% of the dedicated video game market. When you build a game for Nintendo, you've basically built that game for Nintendo and no one else. You know what I mean? You're being very, very specific in your market share. There's overlap, granted. Most people that have a Nintendo Wii U have a computer. Some people that have a Nintendo Wii U have a PS4 and or Xbox One. But very, very, very few people have a Nintendo Wii U and nothing else. No PC, no PS4, no Xbox One. So because Nintendo was pushing that envelope with a weird controller, with a underpowered console, with their coding architecture, which as I agree, proprietarily can hurt them, I don't know what this next console is going to bring to the table, but I'm curious if it's actually going to be something that's legitimately different or something that's like what we've seen before. And remember, this is the company where people used to follow them. The Super Nintendo was pushing the status quo before. It was basically an answer to being a more powerful Sega Genesis. And then Sega kept trying to compete and fall.
Well, and the problem is that Sega came out with more powerful hardware, but they didn't know how to utilize it properly, so Nintendo still came out on top.
There's a whole separate podcast I can go into the failure of Sega. I've studied that so much and so hard because that used to be one of my favorite companies. Back when they were a console maker, but I think it would be a horrific idea for them to go Android. Hold on. I'm gonna play. Josh, I want to play a game. Josh, name a successful Android console.
There's only one real Android console, and its downfall was not the fact that it was an Android console. It was the fact that the hardware was not powerful enough to do the games on it. But my phone is Android, and I can play games on it, and I can play games well, and it works well. The problem is you don't want the phone. You don't want phone level hardware, and you also don't. It doesn't have to be like AOSP Android or Lollipop Android. They can take the code base and just make it off the. I don't think they're saying it's necessarily going to be Android.
Let's not even get. That's another reason. That Android fragmentation.
Okay, first off, that different podcast. 2, bullshit point. 3. It's all about opening it up to make it easier for third-party developers to get on, and that's really what the big point is. It's making the NX more open to allow a wider variety on it to get more third-party games on it, to get that Nintendo audience, that part of the gaming industry that they're missing because nobody wants to port the games because it's just too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see. Who knows? We won't know anything for another year. This is all just pissing in the wind and speculation right now, so we'll see.
Now, remember, Nintendo has made denials before about stuff that came true.
It's true.
There was a time when Nintendo denied that they're in the business of doing a miniature development with smartphone functionality. They denied this rumor in January of 2014.
Well, and here's
then it turned
here's
out
the
to
reason
be
why
true.
I also thought that this might have some traction too, is because of their recent announcement of partnering with DNA to make mobile games, dabbling in Android development. You know, that they'll already be familiar with some of the tools and the ways to work it. Or making it so that two games might communicate better together, kind of like the PS4 and the Vita, having games that communicate well because they're based on similar structures, so that something on the NX can communicate with something on a DS or a new handheld a lot easier. Hopefully that the NX and the new handheld are one and the same, if we're thinking back to previous podcasts. But that's beside the point.
Right.
Again, that might make that combined whatever a little easier, more talkback between the two systems and different games. So that's the only reason why I thought that this had some legs to it.
Mm-hmm. I saw it on Twitter a couple days ago. I think it was like 2 days ago to this date, and I just kind of ignored it because this is one of the largest video game companies in the entire world. Why would you use off-the-shelf Android for your video game development? Make your game engine. You know what I mean? Other lesser companies make their game engine. Your Nintendo.
It's not the game engine though. It's the operating system for the hardware.
Make your own
Why?
operating system.
Why make your own when there are great tools available that open up your platform?
Android's not a great tool for
But it opens up the platform. They save man hours not building an operating system because somebody else already did it better over there. They just put it on their hardware, skin it to make it work, make it so other people can develop on their platform, and then they move on. They don't have to waste time developing another operating system. They don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already been done.
Can I just say
that's why every operating system is based on Unix, because they already did it, and they just say, hey, let's kind of change some stuff around, and there we go, we have it.
Can I just say that there is a benefit to being a closed system versus an open system, especially when it comes to Android. Speaking from the perspective of making a video game for an Android device, because I've done that before, versus an iOS device, you have to worry about, and I'm bringing it back up, Mr. It'll be another podcast, you have to worry about the freaking fragmentation of Android devices. It's not all just one simple, sexy operating system.
But here's where you're wrong on the yes, there is a quote unquote fragmentation issue.
Quote unquote.
I am going to humor you because the fragmentation issue is not nearly as bad as people make it out to be. But that does not have anything to do with Nintendo, because Nintendo will pick their flavor, make it. They don't have to communicate. They're not going to be giving out their hardware or their operating system to other people and say, hey, you skin this, you make this. They're going to have one hardware, one operating system. They don't have to worry about, there's no fragmentation in that. That will be a closed ecosystem, kind of like, say, like the Amazon Fire TV. They don't have to worry about that because they've got a control over that specific realm. It doesn't have to communicate out with the larger world of Android as is.
So here's Stan's final opinion on this. If you want to outdate your console as fast as possible, use Android. Come at me.
Here's Josh's final opinion. You want to get more third-party developers on your platform, use Unix.
iOS.
Make it open. It doesn't have to be just straight Android, but just make it open.
All right, fair enough. I see both sides of the argument. Of course, I see both sides. I'm on one of the side, and I agree with Josh to an extent. I am so dead in the water disagree with you to the thought that.
But you're caught up on it being like Android Lollipop that's running on, and you've got an app like that's not what they're talking about. But that again, neither here nor there. Why don't people let us know what they think in the comments below? Because I would think that a lot of people have a lot of opinions on this. So
yeah, I'm not the smartest person when it comes to smartphone development. I probably know nothing. I probably don't have any idea what I'm talking about. Maybe you do. Let us know. If you like what we were talking about today, go ahead and do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. I'll go ahead and leave a link. And if you like to go ahead and give us a like, we appreciate that. That helps us out. You can give us a dislike if you want. It lets us know maybe the video was bad. But if you could please give a like, that would be appreciated. But this has been Unscripted Gaming. And once again,
I'm Josh.
Stan. Hope you guys have yourselves a great night.